This is NWCN, Northwest Cable News. Northwest news and weather 24 hours a day. Now, Northwest News Tonight.
It stretches for miles across southern Puget Sound. Tonight, investigators are trying to find the source of this massive fuel spill and where it might be headed next.
It's persistent. It's thick. It's heavy. It'll stay around for a long time.
Good evening. I'm Dean Staley.
And I'm Cam Johnson. The beauty of Puget Sound damaged by a thick mess. The spill originally stretched from Commencement Bay and Tacoma to the south end of Vashon and Maury Islands, but it's growing. As K5's Gary Chittum reports, the big question on everybody's mind, where did this spill come from?
Fisherman trolling the calm waters of Puget Sound has no way of knowing he is on the edge of a runaway oil spill. The sheen spreads in all directions. The waters that define a region now carry a toxic load toward land.
This is a big problem for orcas. It worked its way up. This is a nightmare. I think the biggest nightmare about this is that it was a hit and run, essentially. So that, Department of Ecology and people didn't have time to really respond because whoever that big ship was who spilled this fuel either was clueless or greedy and just didn't give the heads up on it.
So what can we expect in terms of how marine life will be affected?
Oh, well, this is a Pacific flyway, so you've got a lot of migratory birds coming through there, and they don't know that this is a place where they can't land, so these birds are going to get fouled. You have a lot of, like I said, ecosystematic effects from this oil spill that's just going to be generation after generation. This is a big problem.
So how many years would it take for something like this to disappear? Never?
We went to the Galapagos after the Galapagos had a crude oil spill, and they are still seeing the effects. Crude or any kind of oil, it's just a major, major problem. And the key thing is quick response. That's how you contain a spill. And we didn't get enough people out there, and in part because, like I said, it was a hit and run. They just didn't know it happened.
So it doesn't sound like this is being treated like a disaster. On a marine life look at this, is this a disaster for this small area?
It's, there are many, many wounds in the sound, and this is a big wound. And so we just don't know how long it's gonna be working its way through the system. But like I said, you've got eelgrass beds affected, herring. It's a herring spawning area. You've got salmon coming through there, and you'll have orcas coming through there. That is an area where I actually was witnessed an orca birth in 1995, right off Point Robinson right there. It is a key area for wildlife.
Very sad news.
Yeah,
Michael Harris with the Orca Conservancy, thanks so much. We appreciate your input. Dean?
Now, breaking news from Northwest Cable News.
Welcome back to special live coverage of another mystery spill in Dalco Passage near Tacoma, Washington this afternoon. And I say another because we were in this same place 3 months ago. October 14th, we had ourselves a spill, which was much bigger in scale than what we're seeing this afternoon. But you're looking at pictures from Sky King, and you can see it's sort of doing this threading pattern. It's described by the Coast Guard as a light silvery sheen of unrecoverable oil. What that means is that they can contain it, but because it is so lightweight, there's no way to really truly recover it. So they're hoping that rough seas will help wash it away and create some evaporation as well. But in the meantime, they do have all kinds of response crews on this thing. Currently, helicopters in the air. There are boats in the water, boats provided by the Coast Guard, Department of Ecology, Tacoma Fire, helicopters from the Coast Guard and the King County Sheriff on scene as well. Department of Ecology has spill responders on Vashon Island looking into this. And at this point, we still don't know where this came from as far as the source. We don't know exactly what kind of sheen this is as far as if it's oil. And they are just very much in the containment phase. They are trying to get this thing from every angle. But as you can see, you've got these little ribbons of sheen that they're trying to contain over a fairly large area. Joining us now by phone is Michael Harris with the Orca Conservancy. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Meg.
I would imagine you have some crews responding to this as well?
We're deja vu all over again, isn't it? And every time we see aerials on Northwest Cable News, a lot of us get excited because we think we have orcas. Hey, Sky King is with a bunch of orcas. And
you probably hope you don't see orcas right now.
That's the thing, and more often than not these days, it's an oil spill. Now the only question is, do we have orcas and oil at the same time? And if we do, I tell you, the orcas are in big trouble.
The orcas tend to swim in this area?
Oh yeah, this time of year is when we see J-pod and the two other pods very frequently down here in South Sound. So that is a concern, and we have had whales down here recently. The calls I've made today, and thankfully we don't have any reports of orcas down here. But I tell you, we know from Alaska, we know from Exxon Valdez that it just takes a couple swim-throughs of those oils, and a population can be decimated.
Which is why the environmental response is so critical, correct?
Absolutely, and they are responding, and it took a half a day last time to get them to respond. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, you mentioned that this is a smaller spill than the last one. Well, you know, big spill or small spill, it's still a spill. And it's like being a little bit pregnant, I guess. I mean, oil and water don't mix. And, you know, I could drop a quart of oil off the side of a boat and foul an entire beach. And so just a little bit of oil can cause a lot of problems down there.
What do you make of the fact that this is happening in pretty much the identical place as we saw it 3 months ago?
Well, you know, like you, we're just getting information about this.
Yeah.
So we don't have all the facts at hand right now. But I do know, and I used to live right down there on the beach. So I know what kind of wildlife are down there. And we're not just talking about orcas. I know we focus on the megafauna, but I've been involved in a lot of bird cleanups after oil spills. And it's heart-wrenching to see what this does to bird life and to other sea life there, and what happens to these beaches and the entire ecosystem when it gets contaminated with this oil. So we have to have citizen oversight. We have to have a panel like they had in response to the Exxon Valdez spill that's being proposed now in the legislature in Washington State, to have a citizen advisory, citizen oversight committee involved in this. We've got wonderful individuals down here who are not just part of organizations, but people who know a lot about oil. We have Fred Felleman, for example. We have other people who can and know a lot about oil. And as long as we get the community involved, we can keep an eye on things like this. We can respond more quickly. And we can, and the best way to respond is not to have an oil spill at all. And when you have citizens involved, that goes a long way in preventing these kind of problems.
And Michael, you said that oil and water don't mix. Oil and shoreline certainly don't mix either. And we understand that it has hit both the east and west side beaches. And some of what we've heard as well is that the response was quick. But there are some who say that they're frustrated that it went unnoticed. That's what you're talking about, this oversight committee.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And the interesting thing about the last spill at Dalco was that we ended up finding out that it was from a ConocoPhillips ship. And the interesting thing is, several years ago, out of interest, we decided to do some research on oil companies to see who were the greenest, who were the best, you know, comparatively speaking, the best oil companies out there. And Conoco was top of the list. And it was just one of those things where they had an antiquated ship that was going to be retired soon, was on the second to last journey, and leaked this oil. So you have to have 100% oversight, 100% vigilance, or else that fraction of a percentage will lead to something like this. And so, like I said, we're still getting the facts in. We're looking at the wildlife side of this. We're making sure that we're getting account of the wildlife in the area, doing what we can do, but it's a tough thing. Once that oil hits the water, it's all over.
And it doesn't just affect whales. We're talking about rockfish. At least these were species that were affected before. Pacific herring.
Absolutely, in the food chain. And that's the thing. I mean, when we talk about conserving orcas and the megafauna, you know, they're on the top of the food chain, but every part of that food chain is important. And a spill like this can wipe out the creatures that are low on that food chain that lead up to providing food for orcas. So all of us
does have a domino effect, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Michael, thanks so much. Michael Harris with the Orca Conservancy. Again, we are inviting you to call in with your questions and your comments, mostly just about what we're seeing here today. And what we're seeing here today is very similar to what we saw just 3 months ago. And if we can, we want to try and show you the difference in terms of what we saw 3 months ago versus today. We can do kind of a split screen image for you. And on the left, that is the Dalco Passage spill from October 14th. That is from 3 months ago. On the right is what we're seeing today. So they're somewhat similar, but as you can see on the left, it was much larger in scale. It was about 1,000 gallons of fuel that dumped near the southern shores of Vashon and Maury Islands. It also fouled up 20 miles of shoreline. And this spill that you see on the right appears to be smaller in nature, in magnitude, but we do know that it has already hit the east and west side beaches.